The Pentagon has failed every single financial audit it has ever taken. 8 years in a row now, and counting. It is the only federal agency in the entire United States government that has never passed one. And we're not talking about a small office losing track of a few receipts. We're talking about trillions of dollars that simply cannot be accounted for. Money that auditors flag not just as missing, but as what the accounting world calls a material weakness, meaning the internal controls are so broken, they can't be fixed with a simple correction. This is the story of the largest financial black hole in human history, and how it was built in plain sight, in possible violation of the Constitution's own requirement that a regular statement of all public money shall be published. Let's start with a date. September 10, 2001. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld stood at a podium inside the Pentagon and made an extraordinary admission. He said, quote, "Our financial systems are decades old. According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions. 2.3 trillion. Gone. Untracked." And the next morning, the world changed forever. The September 11th attacks consumed every headline, every conversation, every congressional agenda. Rumsfeld's stunning disclosure was buried and essentially forgotten, but the money didn't come back. By 2015, the Office of the Inspector General reported that the amount of undocumented adjustments at the Pentagon had ballooned to $6.5 trillion, and that figure covered just the Army. The Defense Finance and Accounting Service, the Pentagon's central accounting arm, known as DFAS, was making nearly $7 trillion in adjustments to financial ledgers in a single year, trying to make the books balance. The Inspector General concluded the department couldn't show receipts for $2.3 trillion of those changes, and $500 billion more were just corrections of earlier mistakes. In 1999, the amount the Pentagon adjusted was 8 times the entire defense budget for that year. To put this in perspective, the Pentagon reports $4.65 trillion in assets and $4.7 trillion in liabilities spread across all 50 states and more than 40 countries. In recent audits, auditors couldn't properly account for 63% of the department's $3.8 trillion in assets. Not 10%, not a quarter, nearly 2/3. And when auditors come in to examine the books, firms like Ernst & Young and Kearney and Company, who have led the Pentagon's audit efforts, they don't even issue a failing grade. They issue what's called a disclaimer of opinion. That means the records are so incomplete, so unreliable, that auditors can't even form a judgment about whether the numbers are right or wrong. It's not a fail. It's worse than a fail. It's a shrug. Alongside that disclaimer, auditors document what are formally called material weaknesses, systemic failures in financial controls so severe they can't be easily corrected. The fiscal year 2025 audit report alone identifies 26 such material weaknesses across the department. So where does the money actually go? Part of the answer lives in something called the Black Budget. Established through the National Security Act of 1947, the Black Budget funds classified military research and covert operations. It was relatively modest at first, around $892 million in 1981. But by the late 1980s, it had exploded to $36 billion a year. Today, the combined intelligence budget request tops $100 billion annually, with $73.4 billion for the National Intelligence Program and $28.2 billion for the Military Intelligence Program in fiscal year 2025 alone. The most secretive programs, known as waived special access programs, are briefed to only 8 members of Congress. 8 people, none of whom are required to have technical backgrounds to assess whether these programs are necessary or even feasible. Former Undersecretary of Defense Donald Hicks defended this, saying a government as open as ours needs some way to protect certain programs. Critics say it's a blank check with almost no oversight. And in October 2018, the Federal Accounting Standards Advisory Board issued a ruling, formerly known as SFFAS 56, that officially allows federal agencies to misstate financial figures and move funds to conceal expenditures deemed necessary for national security. The Pentagon was essentially given official permission to cook the books. Then there are the contractors. According to the Costs of War Project, more than half of the Pentagon's annual budget now goes to military contractors, and the examples of waste are staggering. Watchdog organizations like the Project on Government Oversight, known as POGO, and Taxpayers for Common Sense have spent decades documenting what the Defense Contract Audit Agency, DCAA, the official body responsible for auditing contractor pricing, has repeatedly flagged and failed to stop. Boeing once charged over 177,000% above fair market price for a helicopter spare part. A tiny metal pin worth 4 cents at the time, billed at $71. TransDigm Group was caught overcharging the Pentagon on 46 out of 47 spare parts in one review period. They charged $4,361 for a half-inch metal pin, a markup of nearly 9,400%. They inflated the price of a valve from $543 to $9,801 in just 2 years. They billed $1,443 each for clutch discs that cost $32 to manufacture. TransDigm agreed to repay $16.1 million, then kept doing it. A follow-up review found they were overcharging on 105 out of 107 parts examined. And then there's the F-35, perhaps the most expensive weapons program in history. The Department of Defense now plans to spend over $2 trillion on the F-35 through 2088. Pratt & Whitney, which manufactures the F-135 engine that powers every variant of the jet, has faced its own scrutiny for spare parts pricing, adding another layer to the contractor cost spiral that the GAO has documented in reports, including GAO Report 2-410-6703. Since 2021, the jet's mission-capable rate has dropped from 67% to just 44%. Its full mission-capable rate fell from 38% to 25%. Performance is declining while costs are rising. And despite contractors repeatedly failing to meet requirements, the Pentagon paid hundreds of millions of dollars in performance incentive fees anyway. The GAO put it bluntly, the program rewards contractors for not meeting their goals. The Pentagon once actually tried to address its own waste. In January 2015, the Defense Business Board completed an internal study that identified a clear path to save $125 billion over 5 years, just by streamlining back-office operations. The study found that nearly 500,000 full-time employees were assigned to logistics and supply chain jobs alone, a workforce larger than UPS's entire global operation. The purchasing bureaucracy employed 207,000 people, which by itself would rank among the top 30 private employers in America. But when the study documented far more waste than anyone expected, senior defense officials killed it. They discredited the findings, suppressed the results, yanked the report from the Pentagon's website, and slapped secrecy restrictions on the data. They were afraid Congress would use it as an excuse to cut the defense budget, so the savings were never realized. As Secretary of Defense Robert Gates admitted in 2011, quote, "My staff and I learned that it was nearly impossible to get accurate information and answers to questions such as, how much money did you spend and how many people do you have?" Senator Chuck Grassley, who has been fighting Pentagon waste since the 1980s, summed it up this way. From buying $14,000 toilet seats to losing track of warehouses full of spare parts, the Department of Defense has been plagued by wasteful spending for decades. Every dollar the Pentagon squanders is a dollar not used to support service members, bolster national security, or strengthen military readiness. The Pentagon's latest target to fix its accounting? Fiscal year 2028 for critical issues, with a department-wide goal of 2031. That would be 13 years after the first audit, and even that timeline relies on optimism that has no historical basis. Former Pentagon analyst Chuck Spinney, one of the most famous military whistleblowers in American history, put it simply, "You can't look at this as an aberration. It's business as usual. The goal is to paralyze Congress." And perhaps that is the most unsettling part of all of this. It's not that the system is broken. It's that the system is working exactly as designed. 2 sets of books. Classified programs hidden under false names with their costs deleted. Contractors who overcharge with impunity. Audits that can't even be completed. And a budget hurtling toward $1 trillion a year, with Congress increasingly cut out of the process. Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution says no money shall be drawn from the Treasury except through appropriations made by law, and that a regular statement and account of all public money shall be published from time to time. Veteran Pentagon staffers themselves say what's happening violates that clause. The Pentagon isn't just failing its audits. It has built a financial architecture so vast and so opaque that accountability itself has become optional. And until that changes, the largest military budget on Earth will continue to operate in the shadows, answerable to almost no one.